Hey, here we are talking about coaching. My name is Yannick. I'm here with Nikki and Sirvash, as almost always. Well, we got Nikki back. You've taken a little bit of hiatus. So, hello, guys.
Hey,
Hey, hey.
Um, Today's question is something that I have in the supervision room, in the coaching room, and in almost all coaching spaces in some way or another. Sometimes it's very obvious. Sometimes it just kind of swings in the subtext because the question is around fear and fear failure and rejection. So it's stopping me to get out there, I think was the question, right? So we often arrive there, right? Well, why are you not publishing blog posts? Why are you not posting on social media? Why are you not inviting people into conversations? Why are you not going to network events? Why am I not doing all of these things, right? I can feel some of that too. So it seems to be, I'm not sure if rampant is the same word, is the right expression here, but this imposter syndrome, however loosely it may be defined, this fear of if I were to show myself, if I were to step out, maybe courageously, maybe it feels quite courageous, maybe it feels impossible, maybe it feels like it's just not available to you, depending on how deep-seated that fear is. But, I don't want to make a fool of myself. I don't want to embarrass myself. People are going to think badly of me. People think badly of life coaching, or people are not going to like who I am. If somebody says no, it means that I'm a bad person or I'm not good at my job. I'm going to get ridiculed, or, whatever that fear is, however rational or irrational, however real or imagined, it seems to be stopping a lot of coaches to go out there and either tell their story or have conversations and invite people into coaching. Right? It's such a valuable service. I mean, it's such a powerful thing to offer someone a space to be listened to in this way. And yet we know that. But a lot of coaches are having a real heavy block in actually going out there and offering their help, because it feels like it would be devastating if they were to fail, or if they were to be rejected, or people would say no to that. And so it's out there a lot, and I meet it a lot. So I'm wondering about your experience with it on a personal level. I'm wondering about people that come to you, whether they're coaches or anybody with that sort of thing. I wonder how we can help someone, a coach listening to this, maybe identifying with that kind of experience and this block to get themselves out there and be visible. How could we help them?
yeah, this is another great question, and I think it's so it stops so many people, right? It stops so many people from actually progressing. And here's the thing: I think there's two parts that come up for me. There's probably more to it, but initially, I think one part is around the emotions. And as coaches, we love to look at that part, right? The mindset part, like what is going on my side, and that's valuable, the inner work. And the other side is actually the external side. And what I mean with the external side is actually the skill, the development of an actual skill, right? And I want to touch on that briefly, and then we can focus more on the inside. Is when, and I've seen this in my experience, and I've coached and mentored hundreds of coaches in this area, is the moment someone actually starts understanding this part more. So when they start when they attend trainings on this, when they see examples, then it is usually in their mind, it becomes a bit easier, right? Because for me, the way I look at it is almost like if you don't know how to swim, it is scary to get in the water, right? You can think about like, oh, I'm afraid of like, I'm afraid of drowning, and I'm afraid of like getting in trouble. Things will, of course, the fear is there, right? And I've seen again, like when somebody just dips their toes into the water, and then somebody's there to hold their hand, and somebody like saying like, hey, let's do this together, let's take tiny steps together. Often, while the fear is still there, it gets less and less.
So
right?
having somebody there to support, having other people with you, and kind of going step by step into becoming visible as a coach. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and I think actually, and this was, by the way, a big mindset shift for me, right? And I get this really from Steve Chandler, is that we all start on this side where we are like really bad at something, right? And the only way we can get to the other side of getting good at something is by just taking tiny steps, right? So for a coach, it, most of us, we put so much time and attention and energy into getting good at coaching. It's a little bit like, if you think about basketball, right? You spend so much time getting good at, dribbling and throwing with your right hand. And now all of a sudden your coach says, or, hey, you need to get good at using your left hand. And so that's often when we,
writing with the left hand.
yeah.
That.
So when we get into business, often it's like, oh, now I have to use my left hand. Like now I have to actually talk about my services. Now I have to like find a way to, talk about what I do so I can help more people. It's almost like now you need to learn to play with the left hand. And it's just practice, right? It's being okay with being bad initially. Yes, you're gonna sometimes, you're gonna feel bad. You're gonna feel a bit bad about it. It's gonna feel that people make fun of you. You're gonna feel like a failure because, you take a shot and you're gonna miss. But that's the only way to get better at it. And I think that's a big part that's really helpful for me. And then it's actually seeing, you know what? If I'm committed to being a professional coach, right? I can go on this journey and I can slowly grow. I mean, I've worked with coaches that have done this for 8 years. And 8 years, they just tried it a little bit, and then you're like, oh, no, I'm not good at this left hand thing, right? I'm not good at marketing. Marketing is not for me. Or sales is not for me. And then they just focus on that, right? And again, sometimes it can work, right? We can get referrals, word of mouth, and so sometimes we get that positive feedback. But I think the good news is that, if you put your time and attention on this, and that's really the secret, time plus attention on any area of your work, you get better at it. And of course, like you can read books, you can get courses, you can do all the other stuff. We live in a world where there's so much available, like for free on YouTube through AI. Yeah, that's, I think, an important point to touch on, is that I don't think it's all about shifting beliefs and just doing the inner work. I think that's important when it goes together with working on the skill. But that skill part, I think, is such an important part that I think a lot of coaches miss.
Right. So exploring the story and the narrative and what's deep seated, where does it come from? Understanding that can be really helpful, really powerful to kind of shift that mindset. But a lot of it can actually be desensitized by just dipping your toe first, going step by step, baby steps, building a little bit more, developing a growth mindset, right? Seeing this as a challenge, just getting better at something, because we can all get better at something. Really interesting, because sometimes that's this is the therapy route and this is the coaching route, right? That traditionally that's what it was. Coaches work on behavior, little by little, incremental steps, working towards something. And therapists would look at the mindset shifts and the story and where does it came from. Now it's a lot more mixed, but it's just two different ways of working. Coaches can work on the narrative and the mindset shift, and coaches can also help you desensitize yourself and work on the behavior and just learn and experiment and get better with the skill. Or we do a combination of these. Nikki, what's your experience with this?
So for me, I think I can best talk from my own personal experience as being the one who's kind of still closest to kind of, budding and starting their journey as a coach. I think one of the things that really has brought me comfort and that I always come back to when I question myself is what I heard, and I think it was Carl Rogers. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was the whole lamppost analogy. People are feel better off even for talking to a lamppost over not talking at all. And then you just ask yourself, if you show up with presence and right intention and active listening and all of that, you're already probably far better than a lamppost for your client. For me, that was always something I came back to when I was really doubting myself. The other example I have is really...
I don't think that was Rogers, but...
was it not? Do you remember who it was? I don't know. Somehow it came up in my training.
I've got it from Rich Litvin, but I'm sure
maybe it's that one then.
Said it first.
Okay. But then unknown, quote by unknown, the lamppost analogy.
If somebody
knows,
a good
one.
Drop it in the comments.
Yeah. And the other one is really one that I experience day to day through my work in surf coaching, right? And this has actually become a really powerful way that I've had to learn to engage with my students. I think a lot of people come into surf lessons and then get a bit surprised around how challenging it actually is. And then when we start to learn surfing, we often kind of nosedive, it's called. Okay, so we fall off the board, right? And then people come to me and they're so upset and they're like, yeah, but I've just been nosediving. I'm like, that's awesome. Oh my God, well done. You did it once. If you do it 9,999 more times, you're going to be shredding. You're going to be getting barreled. And I think it's just really reframing people's expectations of like, and that's something that I also had to do for myself, is not to see failure as failure, but failure actually as success. And I think this is another quote from somewhere, and I'm not going to try and remember who said it, but it was, I read it again recently, and this is often cited as like,
do I sense a fear of failure there?
I mean, for sure. Yeah, of course, like, recovering perfectionist and whatnot. But it was really having to learn, the most common predictor of success, the most successful people in the world, is how often and how much they failed, right? And like, if you can turn your mind around and just understand that failure is part of the process and necessary for learning and growth, then for me, it had the effect of making it a lot less daunting and kind of just accepting it and getting on with it. And yeah, trying to learn and fail better.
Yeah, and for some people, when they fail, it's a deep crisis and they have a huge reaction to it. And this is where I think we need to be trauma sensitive, right? Because for some people, it's a failure. They already come with that mindset and they learn from it and they appreciate it. And at the other end of that spectrum, people get paralyzed and they go home, they cry for 3 days. Right. So you've mentioned recovering perfectionist, right? Lots of people throw that term around, perfectionist, but some people really, really suffer. It's really somewhere between difficult and impossible for them to do something that they know is not going to be good or not going to be extremely good, close to perfection. What does that even mean? Right. So I think there's a spectrum again, but we can take steps towards it. And if it really is at the clinical end of the spectrum, maybe that is better placed with a therapist. But we can do a lot to help people who find it difficult to get out there to shift some of these stories. And I guess the one thing that makes a big difference that I just want to put in the room is, what does no actually mean? Not sure if we had a podcast on this. I know I wrote about it recently. What does no mean when somebody says, no, I'm not interested in what you just pitched me? What does that actually mean? For a lot of people, means is you're a shitty coach. But actually could mean, actually, no, not right now, or not you, in terms of, I think a different coach might be a better match for my particular context. Or it might mean not at this price because I just can't afford it right now. I'm not willing to invest in it at this point. No can have so many different meanings. And so that kind of rejection, people take it personal, when most of the time it's really not personal at all. That's just a little nugget I wanted to offer to people, because I do have to close at this point.
But that's a golden nugget, I think. And I think it comes back again to like how much work we've done on ourselves, right? Because I think sometimes the inner child comes back, like, I don't want to hear a no, because that, we want that yes. And I know we're coming towards the end of the session. Like, I think another thing that can be really useful, it connects to what you said, is shifting the focus from outcome to process. Because really, if you think about it, a fear of failure is a fear of the outcome not being good, right? Even rejection, rejection is, I think, a lot more connected to the meaning we give around the no, the stories we create around that, right? And we can really explore, we can journal on those stories and then bring it up with a supervisor or a coach. But the fear of failure, I love what Nikki said, is one is you shift your perception of the failure, but the other thing is actually just seeing that, well, there is no failure, right? It's
only learning.
And that's one way to look at it. But another thing is just like, the outcome is not in my control. When the moment I let go of even like spending energy on the outcome, right? Actually, things become easier. And it doesn't mean that I stop caring, but all my focus comes back to like the process. Like, okay, I'm getting a yes or a no. And by the way, I've done this for like 8 years, right? And this is what transformed my sales, right? The last thing is like, this is what transformed my sales, right? It's just looking like, what did I do well? What can I do different? What can I do better? And what am I learning? But focus on that process, right? And you can constantly get better at the process. We naturally just start shifting that relationship that whole, that fear of failure.
Awesome. Thank you, Sivash. I got to jump. I got a client very soon. So appreciate you guys. Great to have you back, Nikki. Looking forward to what people are thinking about this, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Take care, guys.
Awesome. Take care. Great to see you.
Thank you for being with us today. I appreciate your commitment to learning and growing as a coach. Just a few things before you go. First of all, we're doing this for you, so if there's anything you'd like us to talk about, do send us a question. Secondly, we're not doing this for profit, so we rely on your support to help us reach as many coaches as we can. So if you can send this episode to a friend or tell a fellow coach about what we're doing here, maybe you can subscribe or leave us a review, or even support us on Patreon. That would be amazing. And lastly, you can find us across all major platforms. So whether you like to watch or you like to listen or you like to download episodes and listen to it in your car while you're driving through somewhere with no internet, you can do so too. And that's it from us. Thank you, and I hope to see you next time.